Recently, students at the University of Pennsylvania decided to pull down a portrait of William Shakespeare from the school's English department and replace it with one of Audre Lorde, a feminist writer. The chair of the department said this was going to happen because it's a way of affirming their commitment to a more inclusive mission for the English department. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and this is the right angle on how to rip yourself off from your own expensive college education. Well, as we mentioned, the portrait of William Shakespeare, who you might have heard of, was removed from the English department at UPenn by social justice warriors and replaced with one of Audre Lorde. Who's Audre Lorde, you may say? Well, obviously her immortal words live forever. Here's just a few of her selected writings from the person that replaced William Shakespeare at the UPenn English department. Who I am is what fulfills me and what fulfills the vision I have of the world. Here's a good one. Our feelings are our most genuine paths to knowledge. And then, on the other hand, revolution is not a one-time event. And finally, institutionalized rejection of difference is an absolute necessity in a profit economy which needs outsiders as surplus people. They've replaced the greatest literature in the history of the human race with somebody who writes pamphlets. It's almost like Che Guevara was writing Hallmark cards. Steve, let's start with you. Can you possibly explain to these kids what they have done to their own education by taking down William Shakespeare and replacing his image and his writings and presumably his influence with Audre Lorde?
Oh, my Lord. She writes greeting cards for Lennon's Hallmark shop. It's absolute crap. Good Lord. And that's replacing Shakespeare. Listen, for the kids who actually did this, these social justice warriors who were antisocial, uninterested in justice, and the furthest thing in the world from warriors, there's probably no hope for them. So I'd rather not address that. The people I would like to address are those kids who are wondering what all the fuss is about. Well, let me tell you, I was lucky enough I'm not the younger generation anymore, but when I was in the younger generation, I was lucky enough to have attended a couple of schools that instilled in me a love for the classics. Now, I'll be honest with you, I didn't pay very good attention in high school, but in my 20s and my 30s, I looked back at what I was supposed to have learned. I thought, wow, I think I might have missed out on some stuff. And I went back and I reread and I paid closer attention, and holy cow, Shakespeare invented it all. He taught hundreds of years worth of human beings what drama is. His poetry created romance as we know it still today. What an amazing thing. The problem is a lot of people when they're trying to read Shakespeare, in the book, you can't hear that language in your head and have it make any sense. What I suggest you do is pick up a copy of Roman Polanski's movie version of Macbeth, which is just dirty and gritty and sexy and bloody, and it's just wonderful filmmaking. And watch that, because that's the movie that taught me at the age of, I guess, 13 or 14, how to hear Shakespeare, how to make that flowery language make sense in my head. And sure enough, I fell in love with the movie. I went back, I reread the play, and the book is always better than the movie, right? There is so much more in there that you miss hearing it, that you get reading it. And then you want to go and see another movie production. I can't recommend Throne of Blood highly enough. It's Japanese, all Japanese. It's just amazing. And then you go and you want to see a stage production, and then you want to... Because there's so much depth there. There's so much to find there. And listen, college students, you have been ripped off. You're paying tens of thousands of dollars not to be educated in the classics, not because he's white, not because he's a man, but because he speaks for everybody around the world. And you've been robbed of this, but you know what? It's yours by right, not because you're also a white male, but because you're a human being, and this is essential to understanding your own nature. So you know what? Steal it right back.
Well, Scott, we find it very easy to blame these social justice warriors. They seem like a group of really determined little communists in many cases. But the reason that they've been able to do what they've done, and the reason they've become so indoctrinated, is because we've allowed them to become indoctrinated, and they've been indoctrinated by their own professors. The faculty at the University of Pennsylvania didn't take any disciplinary action against the students. They basically said that we want a more inclusive English department. So instead of speaking to the students, Scott, what might you say to somebody who actually knows better? somebody who actually knows what's actually happening, how would you explain this to somebody? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I'm wondering why the Department of English at the University of Pennsylvania didn't already have a richly inclusive syllabus for that course or for any of its English courses. I mean, why is it that the students have to drive the professors to expand the canon of literature at the University of Pennsylvania? Does that make any sense to you? I mean, these are the people who've been telling us all these years that we must tear down Western civilization, that we must, embrace the continental African literature, whatever else that they want us to look around the world for other influences. I have nothing against that. I think that's awesome. I think it's getting a broader global scope to your learning is terrific. But I think you also have to acknowledge what has endured and what has transcended, as Steve indicates, cultural boundaries. I mean, because even the best African literature has managed to not only has it not managed to escape the African continent, it has not managed to even influence the African continent. The people who grew up with it have not been influenced as much by African literature as they have by Shakespeare, for example. So, first of all, what's going on with these professors? Why isn't it already a broad and inclusive list? And then secondly, I remember what it's like to be young. Oh, it's been a long, long time ago. But I remember thinking when I was being assigned to read the great books in high school and college, I had this determination that I would read none of them because I figured if they were that great, why do you have to be told to read them? It sounds like nobody has to come up to you and go, you have to go see this movie. It's part of your grade. And you're like, really? That movie must suck because if it were any good, nobody would be commanding me to do it under penalty of, not being able to get a degree. So I actually didn't read most of the great books in high school and college that I was assigned. I would skim them lightly, try to get a hold of a Cliff's Notes copy of it, if there was a movie available from time to time. But I'd do anything I could to be able to sort of what's the proper word for this? To fake my way through the essay test, okay? It was only years afterward when I started to pick up some of these books and read them. When I think I've now read through all but 3 or 4 of Shakespeare's plays in the last couple of years, and I'm 55 years old. Finally got around to doing it, and I'm like, what a ripoff of me. Like how I cheated myself out of this richness. And I'm like completely the opposite of Steve. I constantly have people on Facebook telling me, oh, you're reading the plays? Well, you should really watch the movie. I'm like, no, I'm reading the plays, okay? You go watch the movie. I'm going to read the play because even when I'm watching a movie, I see words on a page. I can't break out of that when I guess I'm a writer or something. But I think that we cheat ourselves if we deprive ourselves of this experience. But I understand what the college students are saying. The college students want to throw off the shackles of this oppression of the elderly who force them to read these things. And maybe that's the best we can hope for in college. But let me just say, you Penn students, it's your $70,000 a year.
Hey, Scott, let me throw something in. There's an exception to the rule. Shakespeare's worst play, Titus Andronicus, just terrible. But the movie version by Julie Taymor that came out about 15, 16 years ago and stars Anthony Hopkins is a sight to behold. It's wild, it's crazy, it's bloody, it's awesome. You'll love it.
All right, then. Well, social justice warriors up at the University of Pennsylvania, let me just give you some idea of what it is you're actually doing here. William Shakespeare is not the most venerated writer in history because he's a white male and came from England. He's venerated throughout history because, almost unique among the human experience, William Shakespeare was able to find out what makes all of us tick. William Shakespeare is not writing as a white male. You might be interested to know that it was William Shakespeare who gave the first black character a lead role in an actual play in Othello, that he did the same thing with Jewish characters in The Merchant of Venice, and so on. He, by some miracle, was able to get inside every single human heart, and through articulation that doesn't really bear any rational scrutiny because it's so magnificent, he's been able to show all of us that all of us are these characters. We're not just Danish princes. We're also Moors. We're all of these things. The literature of Shakespeare lives within us because Shakespeare understands better than anybody how the human heart is made. Now, you've just basically stolen from yourself, and you think it's a big social justice triumph and so on, but it's not. all you've really done is made your opinions more narrow, made your views more narrow, and as Steve said, spent $70,000 to come out of college stupider than you were before you went in. It's not your fault. You've been taught this your entire life. For those few of you with a left of a heart or a brain, go out and do some of the things that Steve and Scott have recommended. Read some of this stuff and discover that the universe of human experience is inside each one of you, and it's made possible and brought to light by the genius of the Bard of Stratford-upon-Avon. For Steve Green, Scott Ott, and the rest of the Right Angle team, I'm Bill Whittle. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next time.